I'm introducing Tiana Wood, and she's presenting What's in Your Cart.
No, it's right there.
So, how often do you guys stop to think what's in your cart? Not as in like the objects lying in your cart that when added together at your house make amazing tacos that bring your family together for dinner. Talking about like, have you ever stopped to think where those ingredients came from? For instance, the corn that makes up the taco shell, or the main ingredient that's in your Spanish rice, the rice. Have you ever stopped to think where it came from? Or when you're making mashed potatoes, have you thought that about the process that it went through, that those potatoes went through to make it to your table? Well, of course not. Most people would never think of those things. All you know is that the ingredients managed to make it to your table and made it for dinner for your family. And you wouldn't think twice about what vegetable or grain being messed up until now. And by far, food is definitely at the top of things that you need to survive. And so that's why this information that I'm presenting today applies to you and to your family and to your grocery cart when you go shopping. There's no getting around this phenomenon, this major problem that's going on mostly behind closed doors until more recently. And this information could save you and your family a lot of unnecessary doctor visits, allergies, food allergies, and diseases. I'm thoroughly convinced that genetically modified food these days has played a huge part, if not entirely the reason for my allergy to gluten and other health problems that I've had in my intestinal system, which I'll explain that in a minute. But because of the problems that I've experienced, the challenges that I see others experiencing, and the information that I can't help but be saturated by because my mom is a health educator, this is a topic that I feel strongly about because of its disastrous effects that don't appear until it's too late. And the fact is that genetically modified food is taking the world's food supply over, and the results are wreaking havoc on people everywhere, people in your own circle, your own family. But there is still ways to dodge this monster if you just pay a little bit more attention when you're cruising those aisles of the grocery store. And it will be able to free yourself and your family from more havoc had you not taken any action at all. Today I'm going to cover the problem of genetic modification, the solution that we still have in labeling, and what happens if you decide not to care about what's going into your cart. Popular Science put an article out on the steps to genetically modify a seed. Most people don't have any clue how you genetically modify a seed. They hear the terms, but you just don't really know what it takes to do that. So the first thing that you have to do is to determine the new trait that you want to go into that plant, that it doesn't already do. So I'll give some examples of different traits that they've inserted into some foods that we eat every day later. But second of all, you have to capture the genes. And the way that they do that is by shaving the seed. They take little bits of the seed so that they don't kill the entire life ability of the seed. And they're able to capture the genes that way. And then the third step is to insert the new trait. Some ways include shooting the DNA by a gene gun. Also heating the seed to the point that it becomes stressed and susceptible to the new genes that you're about to insert it with. And then fourth, it goes through the testing process for drought tolerance, salt tolerance, pest and disease resistance, and others. And then it goes into planting. And this is Monsanto's automated greenhouse, where, and if you don't already know, Monsanto has patented all living things as far as seeds are concerned. So everything that is being planted these days is owned by Monsanto, and Monsanto is kind of the king of genetic modification. The most talked about right now is the Roundup Ready trait that they have placed in soybeans and other plants that cause the plant to survive deadly doses of Roundup and are sprayed on them. Corn has recently been inserted with the genes for Bt toxin, which is also, its purpose is to blow up the intestines of any insect that goes to eat it. And honestly, I have to wonder, like, what makes me or you think that trait magically disappears once it gets to our table. They've actually started finding it in pregnant women, in the DNA, in our DNA, even long after you stop eating genetically modified foods. So this problem is kind of big, and the percentage that you'll find of genetic modified foods, genetically engineered foods, has gone drastically up. Dr. McCullough, an alternative physician widely known in the health world, stated that 13 to 14 years ago, only about 2% of the total crops were genetically modified. Center for Food Safety stated that currently up to 85% of the U.S. corn is genetically engineered, as are 91% of soybeans, 88% of cotton, which cottonseed is often used in food products, and according to industry, up to 95% of sugar beets are now genetically engineered, which sugar beets is where our sugar comes from these days. It has been estimated that upwards of 70% of processed foods on supermarket shelves, from soda to soup, crackers to condiments, contain genetically engineered ingredients. Perhaps you've heard that genetic engineering is good because it'll increase our crops and reduce starvation, and it'll help save money so they can make the seed do what would otherwise be very costly jobs, for instance, the Roundup Ready trait. But what you're not seeing is a lot of is the hospitals that are filled with people who don't know what's wrong with them. The people who have been diagnosed with things so critical as like MS, multiple sclerosis, and then later find out it's actually celiac, which is a gluten allergy, which could have been very well directly related to genetic modification. Speaking of gluten allergies, have you ever wondered what's going on with all the gluten-free labeling and like sections of grocery stores being turned into gluten-free? Like in the last couple of years, I found out a couple of years ago that I had this allergy, and since then, I lived in California where everything supposedly, starts and comes from. Their bread still tasted like toasted wallpaper back then, and in the last 2 years, there's so many options everywhere because more and more people are becoming gluten intolerant, and they're becoming allergic to avocados and oranges and tomatoes, things we were never supposed to be allergic to. I mean, if you think about it, bread was like the longest known food in the history of ever. So we were not meant to be allergic to these things, but genetic modification is causing the body to react on itself and freak out wondering what the heck is going on. In an interview between Dr. Mercola and Jeffrey Smith, author of the book Seeds of Deception and Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods, Smith said that rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, osteoporosis, atherosclerosis, various types of cancers, allergies, and Lou Gehrig's disease were all linked with genetic modification. Also, he discussed the studies that have been done with rats and how the reproduction of the rats was greatly compromised when intaking genetically modified foods. I'm going to read to you what he had to say about this on this particular issue. He said, one senior researcher at the Russian National Academy of Sciences fed genetically modified soy flour to female rats, and more than half of the babies died within 3 weeks, compared to only a 10% death rate among the controls that ate natural soy, and the offspring of the genetically modified fed group were smaller and could not reproduce. She, the researcher, also fed genetically modified soy to male rats, and the testicles changed from pink to blue. And in Italy, some Italian researchers fed male mice genetically modified soy, and there were changes and damages to their testicles, including damage to young sperm cells. Then they looked at the embryos of the offspring of the parents who were fed genetically modified food, and the DNA itself functioned differently in the embryos compared to when the parents were fed regular soy. So like I said earlier, it's actually getting into our DNA, it's getting into animals' DNA. And I've simply skipped the surface when it comes to problems with genetic modification. It's overwhelming when you go through the research and the articles talking about this issue, about the horrible things that are going terribly wrong with our food supply. It's depressing to realize that so much of our control has been taken away from us. And the fact that our health of our bodies and our families' bodies are in the control of somebody else. But there's still something that we can do. There's still some hope of a solution, and that is through labeling. The GMO industry is, like I said, taking over, but the different labels that you're going to start seeing more of, and probably have already seen more of, I'm going to show you some examples and explain to you what they mean. Trish Jordan, who works for Monsanto Canada, replied to a friend of mine recently in an email and said that if you want to avoid GMO, you have the option of organic. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say that all organic is non-genetically modified, because they're messing with that too. But for right now, organic is still an option for non-genetically modified. These are some of the organic labels that you'll see that you can trust, because if it says just organic ingredients used, that doesn't mean anything. That means 1 or 2 ingredients might have been organic, and so therefore they can get more money by telling you organic ingredients were used. So if you see these labels, you'll know that the whole thing is totally organic and you're good. The milk label up there is, the reason why that one is there is because the RBGH factor is a genetically modified factor in milk. There's also now the non-GMO verified project that tests products to determine if they're genetically modified or not. It has to come in below an action threshold of 0.9%, and any product containing more than 0.9% genetically modified anything has to be labeled. And this has been a real lifesaver. I mean, you will start seeing, I was going to bring some examples today of some foods, but it's out there. It's all over the shelves now. It's just a little label. It's usually on the front, sometimes on the back. But it's not hard to miss, and it saves a lot of trouble trying to figure out, is this modified, is it not? I'm going to hand out this list for you guys. Also, there's some additional resources on the page for you guys to know how to figure out if something's genetically modified or not when you're shopping. But this list is the conventional Dirty Dozen list that you might have already heard a little bit about. There's several out there, Huffington Post, the Daily Green, they're all posting these, and they're all very similar. And so if you look through this list, take it with you when you go to the grocery store. These ingredients don't have to, you need to get these in organic. Everything else, I understand, price-wise, is not always, you're not always able to buy everything organic, but these things are a must. These are the most pesticide-ridden foods out there. So the problem is big, the solution is simple, but the consequences of not taking any action at all are really scary. And the consequences are growing as the GM world takes over our food supply. More and more problems are arising from it. There still is a solution, even though it's affecting you when you start filling your cart unaware of the poisons that are in it. Now you have the information to know what you can do, what you can still do. Today, I hope that you learned a lot more about genetic modification as we looked at the problem, the solution we have in labeling, and the consequences of what happens if you don't take any action about what ends up in your cart. It's a lot like the warning on a pack of cigarettes. You know, it says that you're really, you have a high risk of getting lung cancer. Well, you might be one of the few that manages not to get lung cancer. But it's up to you as to whether you want to play roulette with your life and the lives of those who dine at your table. Because the risks are huge. You might manage to make it to your coffin without any direct consequences from genetic modification. But when the solution is so simple, why even risk, dancing with the risks? When you think about this information, the problems, the risks, the consequences, and the solution, we take action by putting just one more additional thought into your shopping when you're looking at putting things in your cart. Because it doesn't take much. Just think next time what's in your cart. Are there any questions?
How did you find out you were allergic to gluten?
I didn't take the allergy test because those were like $300, but I had enough evidence to figure it out. I came back from a trip that I should have lost like 10 pounds just based off of everything that happened, and everyone else lost like 10 pounds, but I looked like I'd gained 10 or 20, and I was freaking out going, what's going on? So I tried to go on a fast, went on a fast for a couple of days, added only fruits back, and I had lost I had lost like 2 inches, and that's a lot to lose like overnight. And I was like, well, maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just normal. And so when I added bread back, I immediately gained all of that back. And what it was water retention. And I felt like a beached whale, which is not very comfortable. And so I tried it again. I took it off, went back on, took it off, went back on. And so I just took it out. And then one day I tried barley. I thought it was just wheat. I tried barley and the same thing happened. So I found out the only thing that I can have that most people can't have is oats. That doesn't seem to bother me. But yeah, if you do the process of elimination, you can figure it out. Mm-hmm.
So are we just as a generation becoming used to this? Like you said, it's getting in our DNA, in our genetics. So the reason why this isn't affecting like some of us is probably, I don't know, was there any research on us just becoming used to it?
The bodies aren't getting used to it, but like older generations aren't. You're not seeing as, and this is that I don't have some research to prove it, but I'm noticing like what they've been saying is older generation is not having as many problems with it because they've been eating non-GMO for so long that it's not catching up with them. But for those of us who are, younger, it's it's been bombarding us for the last several years. It's not just been, the last 5-10 years. It's been a little bit longer than that, but it's been pushed really hard in the last couple of years. So the problems have been there, but they're just now figuring out what it is. So it's not that our bodies get used to it because it's a foreign invader. Like when they put these new traits in, these new genes in, our bodies aren't used to it. That's not what it's expecting, and it starts fighting it. And either it starts fighting your body, which causes autoimmune diseases, or it, tries to throw it out some other way. So we're not getting used to it, that's for sure.
Is this list of foods that are all GMO or?
No, these are the thing with conventional versus organic is that Monsanto said that we still have the option of organic. So besides the non-GMO labels, we still have organic. And these are the top 12 most pesticide-ridden foods out there and the most messed with. So if you can go, when you're going in the grocery store and you have to get any of these things, if you can just get these in organic, if you don't have the money to get everything else organic, just get these because these are the top pesticide-ridden. Even if you peel them, it doesn't matter. It's seeped in there. So it helps. And since she said that they're non-genetically modified when they're organic, I guess that'll really help. Especially potatoes, corn, soybeans, things like that. Those are the most. Those are the foods that we intake the most of, in all different forms. So, yeah. And you might even see the little trifolds that are going around for the non-GMO verified project. It'll tell you more information about all the additives that you'll see in foods that, like high fructose corn syrup, which we already know is bad for us. But for there's a lot of different additives that that are actually genetically modified in intermixed with everything. So you might grab that when you're at the store because they're starting to put them everywhere. And if you see it, grab it. It gives you all the information about like soybeans, corn, potatoes, all that. I saw a hand over. Yes.
The milk, what's that?
All I've heard about it, I didn't get to do a lot of research on it, but it's the RBGH factor or whatever, that the hormone that they're putting in. They're starting to genetically modify our meat and our fish as well, which sounds ridiculous, but they're actually genetically modifying salmon, putting them back into the river, and I really don't understand what their point is in that, but it's not good enough for me.
Yeah.
So, the milk is just, there's something in it that they're genetically modifying, and now people are starting to go, oh, wait a minute, I drink too much milk, I'm not going to do this. Yeah.
I just know why they're genetically modifying the salmon. They're actually adding a pink color to Atlantic salmon. It's not pink. So if you buy Pacific salmon, you should.
If you drink like soy milk and that kind of stuff, should you see if it's genetic?
Silk is non-genetically modified now. So it has a little label on it, but you'll want to look at all the labels because soy, like I said, 91% of soy is genetically engineered.
So silk is okay.
Yeah, I noticed that it's on there, so it says it comes in a threshold less than 0.9%. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.